Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Serious. Darkness comes earlier. The nights are getting colder, so let's set the mood to creepy. Reddit. What are some of your supernatural or cryptid encounter stories? Part 2. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was little, me and my sister had an imaginary friend. We could both see and hear her, and she played with toys like a normal kid would. Also, she just so happened to share the name with the previous homeowner's dead daughter. Yikes. While a severe snowstorm at night, some kind of creature or bird seemed to be stranded on the roof. It made a loud screech of a kind I've never heard before. Cats and dogs around me were freaking completely out. It took me half an hour to calm the pets down. I live in Europe. There are not many big birds. Might have been an eagle or an owl, but honestly, I'm not sure. For some reason, I refused to go to a store that my mom asked me to walk to a block away. Then we get a notification saying that there was an abduction on the same block of a child by 3 men and they were armed. This would have been at the same time I was supposed to go to the store. We had rented a home from a young woman who said it used to be her grandmother's home. Our kids all said that it was haunted, but I put it off as an old creaky home and children's imagination. One day, the kids are at school, the wife is at work, and I've got the house to myself. I'm sitting on the couch playing Call of Duty, and I hear the front door open and close and see someone walk behind me just with my peripheral vision. I thought it was my wife coming home. She worked a split shift and I was expecting her, so I said, "Hi honey," got no response. But I'm in the middle of my game, so I play on. In the room adjacent to where I'm at, we had 2 African parrots that my wife had rescued from an abusive home. They would screech and squawk very loudly anytime anyone made a sudden movement towards them. All of a sudden, the parrots are going nuts, and they are very loud, so I yell, "What are you doing to the birds?" No reply. I look over my shoulder to where I can see into the room, see a shadow, hear the bird cage rattle, and see water from the bird's dispenser shoot across the room. I get up and go in there, and no one is there. I walk through the entire house calling my wife, but she's not there. Go back to the living room to see my wife pulling into the driveway. Found out from the neighbors that the previous owner had died there, apparently had a heart attack, and collapsed halfway out the front door. The way the water shot out of the birdcage and fell was weird. It was like it was on line, then paused and fell straight down. Don't know what it was, but I doubt I'll ever forget it. This is only one of many paranormal stories that I have, but it freaks me out the most. I have a big old military chest at the end of my bed. It's solid metal, etc. And one night, I wake up to go get some water, and I get the feeling I'm being watched. So I turn over and look to the end of my bed, and there, standing in the middle of the chest, is what appears to be a 6'5" tall shadow person just standing there watching me. I couldn't see through it, as the darkness it gave off was so deep, and it felt curious, and like it was confused that I was there. I decided to just go back to sleep, as I didn't want to disturb it, but I later told some family members and my brother spoke up, saying he's seen it about 5 or 6 times just loitering in his room, and from where he pointed it out in his room is a straight shot through a wall to mine. We still have no idea what it is, but we call it Bob now, and watch out for it nightly. The old apartment I lived in for about 2 years was above a garage built off to the side of the building, so I effectively had no neighbors, as the side closest to the main building was where the central stairway was. I could absolutely feel a presence, whereas I would have been quite separate from anyone else living their lives. There was either someone or something important that was either there or had been there in the past, but the reason I wanted to mention it is that it was incredibly well-intentioned. I would just get home to an empty place and feel welcomed, like the warm feeling of an older person watching over me, 21 to 22 female at the time. I was quite sad to leave the place to move to another city, and found out through a friend it was demolished a year after I moved out. I grew up in a house that I would describe as haunted. My parents agree, but my brother doesn't. When my parents bought the house, it was in extreme disrepair, and I was a baby, so I would stay with my grandma while they worked on the house. I never stepped foot in the house until it was finished. One morning, my parents walked into the house through the side door into a room that just had dirt floor. There were baby footprints in the dirt. Ooh. I regularly saw weird things in that house. The one that sticks out the most, though, is something my dad saw. I used to sleep in nightgowns as a little girl, and one morning around like 5 a.m., my dad saw a little girl walk into our kitchen in a nightgown. When I woke up later that morning around 8, he asked me why I was up so early that morning and why I was in the kitchen. I told him I had just woken up, and he was shook. When I was a teen and getting into the occult, I decided to do a ritual to cleanse my room of negative energy. The second as I finished, my light bulb exploded, not burnt out, straight up glass shattering. Freaked me out for a very long time. My parents were dropping a friend off at his house after youth group quite late at night. I was looking out the back window and I swear to God I saw a tall, literally skinny as a stick creature man with no face standing in someone's front garden. The car passed a lamppost and then it was gone. Not necessarily paranormal, in fact entirely not paranormal, but I was sitting in a barracks once watching some YouTube about haunted dolls or something, and there was a sort of jump scare that came up, and at that instant there was a power cut. I absolutely shat myself, the most terrified I'd been in a long time. Other than that, I'm sure I saw a ghost 2 nights in a row at my grandparents' old house, lying awake in bed around midnight, and a translucent white cloud passed from one wall to another. Ghosts like to communicate with me, and I'm not sure why. My last house had a ghost in it. It would open and close kitchen cabinet doors, turn on electronics at night, and wake up my son. We moved out of that house over 5 years ago, and my son is still creeped out by the man with blue hair that would wake him up at night. I've had things ripped off walls and thrown across the room. I would just politely ask them to stop. Thankfully, none of the spirits I've encountered have been demons. Land's End Road, Hilton Head, South Carolina, about 20 years ago. The light. All our pictures developed fine, except every pic we took on this road. We actually read about it, the light, in a ghost story book my girlfriend at the time found. So a bunch of us piled in her car and road trip. A mausoleum from the 1700s, an old hanging tree. None of the pics we took of these things developed. No pics that we took on this road developed at all. Every other pic we took on this mini vacation did. Creepy ass tree hanging over the creepy ass road. A few older houses all the way at the end, and then, at night, well, we saw the light. I'm being totally honest. A glowing, shimmering sphere about the size of a volleyball that rose up from the road. Looked like it was rotating fast, white and electric blue light. About 75 yards ahead of us, no houses around on this part of the road, just swamp that eventually led out to the ocean on our right. An old tree and undergrowth to our left. The light came towards us. We freaked out. I threw the car in reverse and we backed up quickly. It slipped back under the road eventually, only to appear behind us at about 35 yards away. I threw the car in gear and we hauled ass to the end of the road that was about 2 miles away. We didn't see the light, just a few older rundown houses at the end of the road. We waited, eyes wide open. Finally, we got the courage to leave after about 20 minutes. We didn't go back. Later on, a buddy of mine said he did some research. Don't know if it's true, but apparently 2 Marines tried to drive through it one night. They ended up crashing. One was dead at the scene. The other died minutes later at the hospital. Also, apparently there was some accident involving some bus. Just different creepy things. That was the only paranormal thing or event, whatever, I've ever witnessed. There seems to be a voice in my house. I'm the only one who can hear it. In the past, I used to hear my brother or my cousin talking to me from another room and come to see that no one is there. And if they were there, they weren't talking to me. Recently, it's been whistling to me in a certain pattern, a higher note than a lower note, very close to each other, like the speed of quarter notes. I would repeat the pattern back to them, and we would converse for a minute or so. Sometimes it will do other patterns, or it will just keep the same sound. I always replicate whatever it does, and it does it back. Only 2 out of 4 of my family members can whistle, and that's me and my dad. I used to think it was just my dad, but I asked him and he said I was crazy. The whistling might just be an appliance making noise, cause they do that, but the talking in my family members' voices, I just don't know. It was a calm night, just another day searching things on Google. Firstly, I heard something really quiet like the wind, and I also felt like I was unprotected. After a while, I heard something like a human who just breathed one time. It was so creepy that I couldn't move. I knew that it was coming from the hallway, but I also needed to go through the hallway to get downstairs, safe with my father who was still awake. So I just grabbed my phone. I just felt like I should and ran downstairs, not looking back. I started crying and telling my father that I heard something. He cheered me up and told me to go back to sleep. Before going to sleep, I put on a black shirt. Black also means protection, and looked up online for some protective symbols. I drew that symbol on my hand, and I felt safe instantly. This symbol did more for me than the cross or crucifix itself, and I am not even a part of the religion who created it. Anyways, when I went to sleep, my father also came upstairs to sleep, but like expected, he checked up on me and then the whole floor to be sure it's all fine. Sure that I still feel a presence and I still hear it in my room and mostly upstairs, because on the first floor I feel totally safe. The symbol on my hand remained the same to this day. I remake it every time it starts to disappear.